Okay, so there's been a couple of people that are like Zium fans who are trying to insert Zayn into this channel and want me to talk about Zayn, want me to explore whether Harry was with Zayn and that they have evidence and they want to like they want me to like basically pull abstracts for them sometimes. I'm like, I don't care about Zayn and Harry. I like Zayn. I think he's very talented, but I really don't want to talk about Zayn and Harry. I don't. I think Larry's enough. If I'm going to talk about Zayn, I'm going to talk about Zayn and Liam. So Zary's, please don't come on here and ask me to and try to like engage in a roundabout attempt to convert me, because it's not going to happen. Okay. Second of all, people that are coming on here that are antis, I can't believe I'm even talking about this, that are sort of scolding about talking about this and, oh, this is some psychological need in you. Buddy, I already said that this is actually my way of not having my mind be too full with data, because that's all I do all day. And so this is kind of a really nice break that is kind of fun. Now, the reason I do like to talk about Larry is it's kind of nice. It is nice to have something that's not political, because that's all I see when I turn on the TV, regardless of what I'm looking for, or on YouTube. But also because I think what Larry Stylinson has become, because it's like 15 years now, is it's a cultural thing. It's indicative of something in the zeitgeist, which it's why it's important to talk about, because ultimately the reason I'm talking about it fundamentally is that it is still a human rights issue, even if I don't like Harry sometimes. Okay. I think somebody mentioned this about music from a sushi restaurant or something, and how he's trying to tell us he's trapped or something. That is the most disturbing music video. I don't want to watch it. I do think it is a good analogy. The metaphor and the visuals is about the kind of the perils of fame, where no one really values you as a person. At least the music executives don't, and they only value what money you can make for them. It's a really transactional thing. But to get into the conspiracy of whether he's trapped, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go there, because a lot of people go down that rabbit hole, and it'll make you depressed. So to continue on the hypothetical analogous and a hypothetical case study, remember this is a hypothetical. It's based on the premise that, let's for the sake of argument say that Larry is true, and so I'm going to say the disclaimer, because we are examining how research in psychological science might explain Harry Styles' dramatic image transformation through a hypothetical lens that assumes that the Larry Stylinson theory, the speculation about a concealed relationship between Styles and Louis Tomlinson, were true. I want to emphasize, disclaimer, that this is a purely theoretical exercise applying psychological research to observable phenomena for educational purposes. We cannot know the private motivations of any individual, and this analysis should be understood as a hypothetical case study that allows us to explore complex psychological concepts. So, working from this premise, we will examine how Styles' evolution from the relatively wholesome image he maintained in One Direction to his increasingly provocative solo persona might be understood through the framework of romantic rejection and the embracing of sexualization as a form of symbolic communication. Okay, so with that disclaimer in mind, I'm going to take us to January 2016, and that's when Louis confirmed he was expecting a child with Brianna Jungwirth. So for our hypothetical case study, this announcement would represent what Fisher, one of the researchers that I'm going to put in the citations, represent what Fisher and Brown's neuroimaging research identifies as a biological finality signal, an event that creates a sense of irrevocable relationship closure. And their studies published in the Frontiers of Psychology found that such announcements activate distinct neural networks associated with both loss and finality. So this combination creates powerful motivation for psychological reinvention, a need to rapidly redefine oneself in response to this definitive separation. The timing here is significant, because Styles' image transformation accelerated markedly following the announcement, coinciding with One Direction's hiatus beginning in March 2016 and his signing a solo recording contract. This convergence of events created what attachment researchers call a perfect storm for identity reformation. That's why, oh, you're a different person. Who was that person I knew? Tashiro and Fraser's research in personal relationships documents that such definitive rejection events frequently trigger reactive self-redefinition, a process where individuals rapidly reconstruct their identity in direct response to rejection. Their studies show that this redefinition often focuses specifically on aspects that were previously subject to protection or restraint within the relationship. In our hypothetical scenario, if Styles had been protected from industry sexualization within a relationship with Tomlinson, the fatherhood announcement would create powerful psychological motivation to reclaim autonomy over precisely those aspects of his identity, his sexuality, and physical presentation. So let's examine how Styles' observable transformation might function as symbolic communication in our hypothetical framework. Following the hiatus announcement and Tomlinson's fatherhood news, Styles underwent a remarkable transformation, cutting his then signature long hair, signing a solo contract, and beginning work on projects that would establish a distinctly different image, including a role in Dunkirk and his self-titled debut album. Most notably, his self-presentation became increasingly provocative over time. From the relatively restrained styling of his debut album, his image evolved to include gender-fluid fashion choices, sexually ambiguous lyrics, and increasingly provocative stage behaviors, culminating in performances that feature explicit sexual movements and commentary. According to Denson's concept of epiphanic performances, these choices can be understood as translating personal emotional material into artistic expression. His research documents how performers often process private emotions through public performances that simultaneously communicate to specific individuals while appearing as general artistic expression to broader audiences. So, I guess the audience members, the ticket goers, the concert fans, you're part of one big cathartic, personal, therapeutic art moment for the performer. At least according to what this is saying. And it's not every concert, but can be. Marshall and Barber's research on celebrity self-preservation identifies what they term targeted I shouldn't laugh, guys. Oh my God. Targeted transgression, which are provocative behaviors specifically designed to violate boundaries that were previously maintained within significant relationships. Their studies suggest that these transgressions often focus precisely on aspects that were most protected or valued by the former partner. So in our hypothetical case, if Tomlinson had been protective of Styles against industry sexualization in marketing, Styles' embrace of increasingly provocative self-presentation would constitute a powerful form of symbolic communication, effectively saying, the aspect of me you most sought to protect is now deliberately exposed. Several specific elements of Styles' transformation align with what psychological research would predict in our hypothetical scenario. First, the timing follows what Sabara and Emery's longitudinal research identified as the typical timeline for post-relationship identity reformation. Initial subtle changes immediately following separation, accelerating changes during the first year, and peak expression 2 to 3 years after the triggering event, precisely what we observe in Styles' career from 2016 to 2019. Second, the nature of the transformation specifically inverts the protective dynamic reportedly established by Tomlinson. Where Tomlinson was observed redirecting sexualizing interview questions, Styles began explicitly engaging with sexual topics in interviews. Where Tomlinson physically positioned himself as a buffer in public appearances, Styles began deliberately centering his body and sexuality in performances. Third, Styles' provocative behaviors increased notably during periods coinciding with significant milestones in Tomlinson's life, a pattern that aligns with what Jensen Campbell's research identifies as responsive identity signaling following attachment disruption. The entertainment industry context amplifies these dynamics. Hogan's application of Goffman's framework demonstrates how industry incentives reward precisely the kind of provocative transformation that would also serve style psychological needs for post-rejection expression. His transition to a solo career created both the opportunity and the professional incentive for dramatic reinvention. So basically, if you take it from this angle, it's not a manipulation by the industry. It's basically they're in collusion just by happenstance. So Graziano's concept of delayed rebellion in highly agreeable individuals provides additional insight. Stiles has consistently demonstrated traits associated with high agreeableness in his public persona. Research suggests that such individuals often conform to external expectations for extended periods before undergoing more dramatic shifts than might be expected when change does occur. An important aspect of this psychological process is its evolution over time. What begins as retaliatory behavior often transforms into authentic self-expression. So basically, what was a "I'll show you" kind of like reaction, it actually no longer is that after a while. It becomes you because it's repeated, and then it well, let's see what else they say. McDermott and colleagues' research documented this typical pattern. Their longitudinal studies found that provocative behavior initially motivated by rejection typically peaks between 18 to 36 months after the triggering event, before gradually moderating as the individual integrates these new expressions into a coherent identity. So observing Stiles' career trajectory, we can see this evolution. His initial post-One Direction presentation showed measured changes, followed by increasingly provocative elements that peaked around the Fine Line album era, approximately 3 years after the band's hiatus and Tomlinson's fatherhood announcement. His subsequent work, while still containing provocative elements, appears more integrated and less reactive, suggesting a transition from externally motivated to internally motivated expression. Self-determination theory helps explain this transition. According to Ryan and Desi's research, as individuals move from extrinsic motivation, which is reaction against rejection, to intrinsic motivation, authentic self-expression, their behavior becomes more consistent, sustainable, and personally fulfilling. So actually, maybe he just likes it now, like this way. In recent interviews, Stiles has spoken more confidently about his self-expression, suggesting this integration process. What may have begun partly as a response to relationship dynamics appears to have evolved into genuine artistic and personal expression. So this is not a Harry that's being forced to do this. It's kind of like his own thing. All right. So as we conclude this hypothetical case study, it's worth emphasizing several key insights. First, what appears to outside observers as simple provocative behavior or image reinvention may represent complex psychological processing of past relationship dynamics. So if our hypothetical premise were true, not saying it is, this is all a hypothetical, then Stiles' transformation would reflect normal psychological processes following significant attachment disruption. Second, the specific nature of his provocative self-presentation, embracing the very elements he was reportedly protected from, aligns perfectly with what psychological research predicts following the dissolution of protective relationships. This form of symbolic communication is particularly effective because it transforms private emotional processing into public expression. Third, the entertainment industry provides both the opportunity and incentive structure for this form of expression, amplifying natural psychological response to rejection and transformation. Finally, the gradual evolution of Stiles' provocative expression from seemingly reactive to more integrated suggests the healthy psychological progression that researchers observe as individuals incorporate new elements into authentic identity. So again, I want to emphasize that this analysis operates from a purely hypothetical premise. The actual circumstances of Stiles' personal life and the motivations behind his artistic choices remain private and known only to him. What this case study offers is insight into the complex psychological processes that can drive dramatic transformations in self-presentation following significant life changes and relationship transitions. So once again, thank you for listening. So that's a very academic, formal explanation as to how people can have this breakup and become really super wild afterwards. What begins as rebellion and anger and punishment of the other becomes integrated in some individuals, and now you see that this is who they are now. This is who I am. Maybe it was a part of them that was not yet formed and not yet expressed, and they weren't old enough, and it just wasn't. It's like it was not that it was. It's not that it was never them. It was that it was dormant, or it just was still forming, and it didn't come to fruition. So it was a seedling at one point, this aspect of them, and now it's like a big fruit, which he likes to use fruit a lot in his song titles, right? So I don't know. I mean, it kind of sounds a little out there, but it's been known to happen where people that are celebrities have used their platform to kind of get back at somebody and have this whole audience that's part of that experience. And yeah, I mean, having a performance where you're going to get paid a lot of money to kind of have this showman, and there's provoking behavior that in the first 2-3 years, the proximity of these events that you were really provocative on stage coincide with life events of your former partner that rejected you, and there was a finality to the rejection. Then yeah, I could totally see how it is way more effective and way more financially beneficial than just posting on Instagram how you're living your best life, so that you know, because you haven't yet blocked your ex, and you know they're going to see it, and you want them to see it, maybe out of a need to possibly bring them back, or possibly want to not have them back, but at least have them suffer a bit more because of how they may have made you suffer, or you believe they made you suffer. But at least in the case of being a performer, I mean, how many people have made a lot of money by lamenting over an ex? I mean, like Taylor Swift, apparently, that how many Grammys did she get for writing songs about her ex, and it turned into a big hit. So it's a formula that has worked. I believe Carly Simon also wrote songs about James Taylor, like "You're So Vain." I think that's about him, and that became a big hit. And like it was on the charts for a while. So every time that song came on, and I think it took on some cultural significance. That it was a dig every time that song got played. So it can be particularly effective, I guess, if you're an entertainer, because, well, how many songs do I write about you, right? Like, oh wow, like talk about